Hi, everybody. Welcome to the last 30-second podcast. My guest today is Mary Alessi. Mary Alessi is an Australian author, speaker, coach, and grief advocate. She is best known for helping people deal with loss, healing, and emotional resilience. And her life changed after her late husband, died suddenly from a brain aneurysm in 2018. And she was 45 years old and had two young children at the time. And after this tragedy, she began sharing her personal journey of grief and healing. And she turned her pain into a platform to guide others toward joy and meaning after loss. And she also wrote the books about grief, including Happy Healing and Loving Life After Loss. And she also speaks internationally about healing and resilience. She teaches that grief is not something to get over, but something we learn to live with. She runs retreat programs and workshops to support people through the loss. And she is based in Australia and continues to inspire others with hope and compassion. And here we go. Please welcome Mary Alessi. Mary Alessi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Mary, before we jump into your story, I want to set the stage for our listeners. I feel like it's super important for people to get a sense of where you were coming from and who you were, what kind of shape you, and what was kind of missing in your life back then. So paint that picture for us. Take us into that world for a second. Who are you
Yeah, sure.
before grief showed up in your life?
Yeah. I grew up in Austria. I was born in Vienna, and I am one of five children. And my first real deep encounter with grief was actually when I was 20 years old, when my dad passed away from cancer. So I back then felt very isolated and alone in my grief. I didn't feel that anybody knew or understood what I was going through. And that, I feel in hindsight, prepared me for what was to come later and to find a different path through grief for myself, for our children, as well as for thousands of other people that I have worked with over the years. But life before moving to Australia was all very, very different to when I finally chose to follow my heart, which told me that I was born on the wrong side of the planet. I needed to move to Australia. I always felt very drawn to Sydney, and then decided to make Sydney my home. After coming back and forth for like 7 years, I finally moved here in 2004. So July 2004, I moved to Sydney. Only 10 months later, I met my future husband, Rob, and another 10 months later, we were married. If anybody would have told me that beforehand, that I would get married 10 months after moving him, I would have said there's no way. If he's Mr. Right, he'll still be Mr. Right after 3 to 5 years. But Rob proposed to me 5 months after we met, and I said, of course. So we got married literally within 10 months of meeting, and I never regretted it for 1 second in my life. We had two beautiful boys, and they are meanwhile 18 and 16. I can't believe they have turned into such young men themselves. So life was all about family and love and connection. And we spent a lot of time at the beach. We just loved going there as a family. My husband was a very keen surfer and spearfisher and diver and snorkeler, like everything to do with the ocean. Rob was there. And that meant we spent a lot of time near the ocean. And then in 2008, Rob went on a business trip and didn't make it back. He died from a brain aneurysm very unexpectedly at the age of 45.
What was the best moment have you created with your late husband, Bob?
I think I would definitely pick, there are three moments that really stand out for me. One was our wedding day, which was absolutely incredible. We had a barefoot wedding on the beach, which was beautiful. That was a dream for both of us. Even before we met, we both always said we were going to get married barefoot on the beach. And then we met and we both had the same dream. And that was incredible. I still remember kneeling in the sand, signing my wedding papers. It was absolutely picture perfect day, sunny and beautiful. And yeah, we just had a beach wedding with our closest friends and family. Rob and I were dressed in white linen, and all our guests came in red and orange, and it looked so stunning in the background with the beach. And the other two that I would pick were the birth of our sons, and Rob was there, obviously, or not obviously, but luckily for both of them. And they were absolute magical experiences. It's just such an intense experience for a woman being part of creation and having that honor to give birth to another human. Is just absolutely incredible. A lot of people share birth stories as rather negative or painful. Mine were absolutely magical and beautiful. So, absolutely beautiful memories.
What was the first thought maybe that hit you in the moment of losing your late husband? What was running through your head?
First of all, when I received the phone call from the sergeant from the coroner's office, it felt very surreal. I just felt like this can't be it. You know, just rewind. There's a mistake. Something is not right here. And then minutes later, I had to share the news with our boys who were only 10 and 8 at the time. And the first thing that came in my head was a conversation that Rob and I had about 3 years prior to his passing. And in that conversation, we talk about what would you do if something was ever happened to me? And our conversation led us to, I would want you to create the happiest life possible for you and the boys, because that's what love is. You know, you want the other person to be happy no matter what. And that was the first thing that popped into my mind when I had to share that with the boys. I have to create the happiest life possible for them and myself. I had no idea how, but I knew that was where I was going. It became my lighthouse in my darkest hour.
We do know everyone goes through the moment where they think, yeah, this is a difference. Nothing's gonna be the same after losing someone close. And yeah, maybe it hits you hard, and you feel like your world just got flipped upside down, and you try to act like everything's normal, everything's chill, but and inside of you, it's totally chaos. And honestly, I can't even imagine losing a spouse because, and I had a fantastic story about my grandma, and I lost my grandma when I was 7, and I've been living with her since I was little, and she was my safe zone after my mom. And you know, she always cooking the breakfast for her grandkids, and she always loving and making the house feel like home. And one day I walked into the kitchen, and I was expecting her to be there like usual, and she wasn't. And in that moment, I didn't even feel sad or something like that. I asked my parents. Where's grandma? They told me she went to another world. They didn't say she was gone forever because I was a kid, and they didn't want to freak me out. And back then, I didn't fully get what actually death meant. And all I knew was my safe place was gone. And as I got older, I realized that emptiness never really goes away. Sometimes I catch myself looking for her in the old photos, and other time I swear I see her in someone else's face. And sometimes it's a smell from the kitchen that reminds me of her cooking. And that's when I realized life can change in a heartbeat. One day, someone's there, and the next day, you're learning to live without them. You feel like your heart is on a different timeline than the rest of the world. And maybe that's what keeps us going as a human, even when a piece of our world is gone, even when it feels impossible, we somehow carry their love with us.
I definitely feel that you carry the love with you. I don't have that perspective that the emptiness will always be there. I feel that we reshape our lives. You know, this is never about replacing someone. I cannot, and I don't want to replace Rob. It is that we have reshaped our lives to not carry that emptiness with us, but fill it with something that we promised that we would do, create happy memories, create that. And yes, there are moments where Rob is certainly missing more than in other moments. But I refuse to see that as this is an ongoing and always there moment. Nothing, no emotion is always there. Like, you don't always feel sad all the time, 24/7. You don't always feel happy all the time, 24/7. Emotions come and go, and they're all part of life and in all different configurations. And, I feel if we hang on to grief 24/7 and we decide that this hole or this emptiness that a lot of people refer to will always be there, then it will always be there. But it's a choice that we make. It's a perspective that we choose. And it is not the perspective that I choose, not for me and not for my kids. And I believe it's just a matter of keeping the conversation open and being open to other perspectives and other reframes in our lives, how we can look at life from a different angle and make grief a normal conversation. People always describe it as something so heavy and so constant, and I don't agree to either. I just don't see it that way.
Some people never bounce back from heavy loss, and they hit the rock bottom and somehow they find a way to rise. And others just get stuck in the mess and can't seem to move on. What do you think makes the difference between the one who come out stronger and the ones who stay stuck in their life?
It's a couple of different factors, but the number one factor would be choice. I think there is such a stigma around grief that society suggests that we don't get over it. We can't heal from it. We move forward with it. That's a choice. That's a different perspective to the one that I have. And not choosing to heal is also a choice. If we don't choose something, that's also a choice. And a lot of people don't understand that. And then, of course, there is the spiritual element. It really depends on what your spiritual background and what your spiritual beliefs are. For some people, they feel or think there's nothing after we die. Other people feel and think there is everything after we die. For me, I know for a fact that once we die, there is purest, unconditional love waiting for us. And I absolutely believe that we reconnect with our loved ones that have gone before us. And there's also a lot of things that very much point in that direction. People who have come back from near-death experiences who share experiences of that unconditional love. And then, of course, your surroundings as well. If you have people around you that feed into that belief that negativity or the sadness or the heaviness or the emptiness will always be there, then that's what you start to believe as well. And that's the way you live your life as well. I am very, it is very important to me to offer something different, to offer something where you can really live a very happy and very fulfilled life. And the fact that Rob died will always be a fact in our lives. There's nothing that you can erase or, just like anything else. Like I've got a scar on my right knee from when I was 7 years old and fell. That scar's never going to go away. The fact that I fell and hurt my knee really deeply, that's always going to be there. But did that stop me from living a beautiful life? Did that stop me from wearing skirts where people can see my scar? No. It is part of me. It's part of my life. Yet it is not the main focus. I'm not now the girl that always wore a scar on her knee. People don't even realize that I've got a scar on my knee if I don't talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm also not willing to be seen as the widow. Oh, that's Marie, the one who lost her husband. That's not how I define myself. I'm a grief advocate. I'm a speaker. I'm a writer. I am a very positive and happy person. That's how I want to define myself. Not over my loss or the grief that I have experienced. It's only one tiny part of me. There's so much more to myself than just the grief.
Let's switch our conversation to grief, because this is your topic, this is your subject matter, and you're kind of known for speaking on grief and healing. And I know grief is super personal, like the kind of thing most people keep close to the chest. And
Mhm.
but you decided to put it out there so other people could actually learn from that and feel less
Yeah.
alone. And
Mhm.
maybe I admit that's not easy, like flipping your pain into something that helps somebody else. When did you realize that the story wasn't just for surviving, but something you needed to share with a bunch of people?
Probably about 4 months into Rob's death, I sat with a positive psychologist. I worked with her through my grief, through my loss, through my soul parenting, through the decisions that I made, and in particular, the decision to look at grief differently to what society expected, because society expected me to fall apart, and I had a very different path planned for us. And one day I sat in her office and I talked about how heavy that expectation of society weighs on me, that waiting for me to fall apart, waiting for me to, um, you know, wade through grief like everybody else was expecting me to do. And she said, what does grief mean to you, Marie? And to my own surprise, the first word that came up was empowerment. I was like, wow, I did not expect that word in a connection with grief. And I said, I think I need to write a book about this. And so I did. And 5 weeks later, I published my first book, Loving Life After Loss. And in that book, I share about how I met Rob, how we fell in love, how we had our dream barefoot wedding, our beautiful boys, and then also how he died and how I dealt with it. And in that book, I shared everything just very openly from my heart because I thought one day when the boys are old enough, they might want to read this book. It's our story. And what I didn't expect was that the book ranked in the top 100 bestseller list of Amazon Australia. And with that, I knew I had something the world needed. And I carried on to create a movement based on that title. So the movement Loving Life After Loss started in March 2019. And I ran it for about 5 years. And in those 5 years, I took approximately 5,000 people on their healing journey through programs, retreats, one-on-one coaching, speaking arrangements. So everything I did in that movement was simply sharing straight from my heart my own story, my own emotions, my own reframes and different perspectives on grief. And it seemed to attract a lot of people who were seeking that and did not want to succumb to society's expectation how you are supposed to grieve. I gave them a different path, and people were very drawn to that. They needed that lightness that I brought into the world of grief.
Grief is such a strange thing because it doesn't always
Mm,
show up when we expect it. And I think a lot of people assume that after a certain amount of time, it should just fade away. But that's not always how it works. Yeah.
mm.
So do you have another experience of dealing with grief when it hits you out of the blue?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about here is triggers, like grief has got this element of triggering you in ways that often come quite unexpected. They are the obvious ones that we can sort of expect when it comes to either a passing anniversary or a birthday or a wedding anniversary or Christmas, like all these family gatherings where you sort of know that it feels different when your loved one is not around. But then there are the unexpected triggers. And I remember I was driving down the coast one day, and it was only very shortly after Rob died, maybe 2 months, 3 months. And I had booked myself a massage because I really needed some care. I just really needed uh, some pampering, some relaxation time. And I had found this beautiful lady that I've known before. And I booked in a massage and I was driving down the coast and I was driving along the bridge. And all of a sudden, a song came up that really triggered me. And I burst into tears and I walked into that place absolutely in tears. And I sat there the first 20 minutes just bawling my eyes out. I was just crying, sharing about what had just come up for me before I could even get onto the massage table. And I was very lucky that there was such a beautiful lady. She held space for me. She just sat there with me. And it really comes out of like music is a big trigger. I was sitting at a doctor's office and I thought I had a really good day. And all of a sudden, our wedding song comes up, and I'm sitting in the doctor's office and I just burst into tears. And everybody just looked at me like, what's wrong with her, you know?
Mm.
And the weird part about that is you feel like you want to explain it to people why you're crying. You feel like you want them to know why you're crying, that you're not somebody who's just mentally unstable, but you just lost your husband, you know? But then there's also the, do you just talk to a whole doctor's office and tell everyone that your husband just died? It's very bizarre. You know, there's a trigger, there's the emotional response, and then there's the reaction from the people around you that may or may not know what's going on. And when you're in a situation where they don't know, it's really triggering because you want people to know why. And at the same time, you don't always feel like just sharing because it's not always appropriate. You know, yeah, it's learning how to handle those triggers and also to be okay. I was absolutely okay sitting there and crying, but the nurse felt uncomfortable and she took me into her office and said, do you want more space? And just talk to me nonstop. And I thought, I just want you to stop talking. Just allow me to cry, you know?
Mhm.
We need to be comfortable with that, allowing people to cry.
Maybe if someone told you they could fix your grief, how would you respond to that?
There ain't no fixing. Emotions are not there to be fixed. Emotions are there to be felt. And I think, or my belief is that every emotion uh, also brings a message. You know, what's the message there for me? And sometimes the message is to just feel it, to just be with it and just allow it. That's why I said before, I feel people need to be more comfortable with you crying. If you feel like grieving in that very moment and the tears are coming, then allow that. But grief can also look very differently. Grief can look like bursting into laughter because you just had the most beautiful memory of your husband and you, and it just really overwhelms you. And grief doesn't always just come out in tears. It can come out in any other connection with any other emotion, and that's okay. There's nothing to be fixed. Just create space for it. Allow it to happen. People always try to push it away because it feels uncomfortable, but it's not always.
I want to talk about joy. So a lot of people think grief and joy can exist together. So
Mm,
so many of us try to separate our feelings, like grief belongs in one box and joy in another box or something like that. Uh,
yeah.
but but when I hear a story, maybe you found a way to hold them together. I mean, you let
Yeah.
grief and joy coexist in your life. That's not
Hmm.
something most people get. So
Yeah.
how did you learn that they actually can?
I try to explain how I feel and how I choose to live my life through these two characters, grief and joy, because as I said in the beginning, you know, most people come from that understanding or from that belief that grief will always stay with you. And after Rob died, I certainly felt that grief was living with us 24/7. You know, she never asked to move in. She was just there all the time. And I also felt that it was really hard to re-invite joy into our lives by, you know, after having just lost Rob. So for me, there was this time where I felt, um, it came to the point where I felt grief had overstayed her welcome. I needed her to leave. I needed her to move out. And I was okay with her to come and visit whenever she wanted to. And whenever I had time, I allowed her to come in. But there were also times where I didn't have time for her, where I was busy sitting with Joy or, you know, being in family time or working, and there was no space for her. So there was also a little bit of compartmentalizing, you know, and very often, more often than we realize, we can actually choose who and what and when we make time for an emotion. It's just like with any other friend, you know. And as we all know, if we personify that, as I just did, if you invite a friend over where you know this friend is always heavy and negative and just wants to cry and talk about sad things, it takes a lot more effort and energy and time and dedication to be there for that friend. And you would have to think about when you would actually like to have that friend come over, when you're really ready for it. And when you think about that friend that is always fun to hang out with and it's just light and easy and you can just laugh and joke, like you wouldn't have to think about when you make time for that friend, you'd always be there, you know, like even if it's just for 2 seconds before you have to go, you know, online for an interview or whatever. I was like, yeah, yeah, quickly come on in, give me a hug and you chit chat. But you don't have the same hesitation with joy to allow her in instantly as you have with grief. You know that it takes more time and dedication. Um, that doesn't mean that she's not a friend of mine. That doesn't mean that I want to neglect her or completely kick her out of my life. It just takes different strength and dedication and energy to make space for her. So I had a lot of moments where I was sitting with grief and joy, and they both came over at the same time. And we would talk about memories, and we would laugh, and we would cry, and we would sit in silence, and we would chat. And I feel when you think of those emotions as people, as persons personified, um, it really helps realizing and understanding when you make space for who, for which emotion, and the choices that we make in our lives, because we become the average of the 5 people that we hang out with the most. And when you think of that, you choose your friends really wisely. You would not deliberately choose friends that are always in a negative, always in an unhappy mood. You choose the ones where it's light and easy and powerful or productive or whatever you want in your life, whoever you want to be, that's who you choose to hang out with. So I would not pick grief as the number one person that I would spend most of my time with.
Was there something about grief that surprised you? I mean, something you never expected to learn?
Yeah, it was definitely what I shared before to find empowerment in grief. I did not expect it at all. And I also didn't expect to find such a beautiful and huge community. Like, I never thought that I would be founding a community like that. People who wanted to find a way to love life after having experienced the loss. And I just knew when my first book ranked in a top 100 bestseller list of Amazon Australia, I knew there was a different path that people really needed, and a path that I wish I had seen when I lost my dad when I was 20. And I didn't see that path back then. I had no support in that. And that's why I'm so big on having the right support in your corner, having people, the right people to surround you to help you through, yeah, help you through that moment of darkness and find the light in all of that, find your path and your way out. And I think I want to just say that one thing with grief, it is really a moment where we realize more than ever before how precious life is. Yet a lot of people tie that realization to the person's death rather to rather than to their own life. You know, when you realize how precious life is, you don't look at death. You take your life and create the best that you have with your own life because you realize more than anyone else how precious life is. That's your duty. Life is such a gift. Don't waste it.
You had a lot of fun in your life.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say so. Yeah, but yeah, I think it's very much about the quality of your friends rather than the quantity. You know, it doesn't matter how many friends you are. It matters how many true friends you have, the ones that you're really, really close to and really enjoy spending time with, right?
Yeah, when I was young, I have a lot of friends. Maybe I have a lot of
Mm.
friends, and I think mm, when I when I reach 30 years old, I feel like it is important for me to to choose who is my friend, who
Mhm.
is my
Yeah,
good
absolutely.
friend, who is my bad friend,
Mm.
because yeah, we're gonna stay in one circle.
Absolutely. Yeah. The older we get, the more we realize the quality of our friendships is way more important than how many friends you truly have.
Mm. So quality is
Mm.
more important than quantity.
Always. Yeah, I'd say so.
What was it like the first time you stood on the stage and told such a personal story to a bunch of people? And you know that
Mm.
must have been terrifying and liberating at the same time. And I can only imagine all the nerve and hype you were feeling back then. You
Mm.
sharing something personal in front of a crowd, and that's gonna take a lot of courage. And I bet your
Mm.
heart was racing for the first time.
I think I've done a lot of training around speaking. When I first spoke, I was petrified, absolutely petrified. I didn't think I could ever stand on a stage. And that was way before I actually spoke on a topic of grief, because when you speak about a topic that is so personal, it is, even amplified when you think about that. But what what I realized and what really helped me was that it is not about me. That was really, really important. It is not about me. It is about the message I share. It is about what people take home from that message. It is about reaching other hearts to absorb that message and to have hope going forward. And that's what I wanted to do. So the less I made it about me and the more I made it about my audience and the message that I wanted them to take home, the less nervous I was. And when you speak about your personal story, online or on real stages, I mean, on physical stages, the more you do that, I mean, I've shared my story way more than 1,000 times now, far beyond that. I can't even count it anymore. And when you share your story or parts of your story so many times, uh, you become really good at refining your message, because all you want is that message to hit somebody's heart and make a difference in their lives. I know my story really well. I don't have to tell it one more time, but I choose to because I want people to receive hope and healing and a new perspective. I want them to learn how to reframe. I want them to learn how to choose joy over grief or joy over fear. And I want them to realize how freaking precious their life is, and to not sit there and stop at a closed door, but look around and see all the open doors behind you and choose one that speaks to you. You know, that's what I want for people. So I chose to overcome my fear because I wanted people to hear the message. I wanted people to heal. I wanted people to receive joy and love and happiness and healing in their lives. So the fear is never about speaking. The fear is always about judgment. When you're on that stage and your heart is racing, it's racing because you're worried about what people might think of you, or what people might think of the way you speak or the way you're dressed or what you know. It's always about the judgment. We fear the judgment, and yet it is not about any of that. What we are worried that they might judge. It's about, what do I want my audience to take from this?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. We
Mm.
fear we fear about the judgment. We
Mm.
fear that people criticize us before we do the performance on the stage. Yeah,
Mm.
I feel that sometimes when I do the podcast on the YouTube, yeah, I care about other people think about me. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's not true. That's not good for us. That's not good for our mental health.
Mm.
Be- because
Yeah.
we because at the moment, like we don't care about ourselves, and it is very
Mm.
important for our self-care. We need to manage
Yeah.
every single day. So I want to wrap about storytelling real quick. And
Hmm.
I don't know, telling story is like basically your whole thing. And even just hearing someone else's journey can make you feel seen or less alone.
Mhm.
Why do you believe stories got the power to heal?
I think it's because storytelling is what connected us from very early stages in mankind. Like we used to sit around the fire and tell stories. We used to share a lot more and a lot more openly. These days, we are so connected via social media platforms and Zoom links and anything else that connects us in a technical sense, but in an emotional sense, we are more disconnected than ever. So when we share our story, emotional human connection happens. And that's why I find it so important because we need connection. We need the sense of we're not alone in this. We're so connected. And whenever we are listening to a story or whenever I'm on stage sharing my story, a connection happens from heart to heart because you can see yourself in a story or you can find something that will help you heal. Um, because you realize you're not the only one who has gone through that. And we don't heal well in isolation. We need community and the right people around us to create that space for us, to hold space for us, to be there and walk through fire with us.
So there's an element of communication between us and the
Hmm.
audience. So it
Hmm.
is, why do you think communication is so important, especially in the modern world?
It's for the connection. It really is for the connection. If we don't communicate, we disconnect. And yet, I want to throw something in there that might sound very contradictory to what I've just said. We also need to learn to sit in silence with each other. Because a lot of people, especially when it comes to grief, they jump in and they want to say something. They want to fix it, like you said before. But there is no fixing. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a friend when they are going through really hard times, through any adversity, is to be there for them, to just be there, just sit with them, just hold that space in silence. You don't need to say anything, you don't need to fix anything. You just need to be there, you just need to be present. So it doesn't really matter whether that happens in storytelling or in silence. What matters is the connection that you feel. And that's what we have become quite bad at. We really need to hone in on those skills and sharpen up on those skills to connect from heart to heart with people.
Joseph Stalin said,
Hmm.
the death of one man is a tragedy, the death of million is a statistic. And I
Hmm.
fell in love with this idea of human loss and how we possess that. One death
Hmm.
make us stop. One story make us care. We remember the face, we remember the name, and suddenly we are connected to the dead person. But a thousand death, that's too much. Our brains and our hearts can hold it all at once. And
Hmm.
so I was watching this YouTube video from Simon Sinek recently, and the
Hmm.
title of the video was "The Importance of the Stories." And he shared
Hmm.
about this young man, Kemi, who lived in
Hmm.
Southern California. And one
Hmm.
day she was driving home from work, and she turned the corner, came upon a car accident that just happened. And at the time, the ambulance hadn't arrived yet. A 70-year-old
Hmm.
driver had accidentally hit an 18-year-old pedestrian, and the girl was lying on the street. You get what I'm
Hmm.
saying, Marie? Right.
Yes, yes, 100%.
And Cami, the girl Cami pulled over, and luckily she knows some basic first aid, and
Hmm.
she performed CPR on the young girl to keep her alive until the paramedics get there. And eventually
Hmm.
the paramedics showed up, took over, and rushed the girl to the hospital. And a couple of
Hmm.
days later, Cami was curious what happened to the girl. So
Hmm.
she went online and found out that the young girl had died. So,
Hmm.
which is more powerful, the death of thousand people in some abstract way, or the death of one young girl in California? And I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
power of story. When
Mm-hmm.
when you tell one story, you create empathy and memory.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it's a
and
connection. You're connected
yeah,
to her now. You
the
know who she is.
the story make you feel like you got to do something, and that's why storyteller hold a kind of
Yeah.
power because
I love that.
because in a
Thank you for
world
sharing.
because in a world drowning in state and data, story are the thing that actually get to people. One life and one
Yeah.
story can shake the world. 1,000
Mm.
number, I think it's not until they become the story afterwards.
And and the beautiful thing of what you just shared is that those 1,000 people, they each
Uh,
have one story.
uh, what is yes, the biggest impact of your work on the people you serve?
I know for a fact that I have changed a lot of lives. And I know by the sharing of some of those that I have also saved a lot of lives and people who are ready to give up, people who are ready to join their loved ones and have thanked me later for having them shown a path out of this or through this. And I think the impact for me is not only that these people have survived, but they have found purpose. They have found purpose through their loved ones passing. They have found a way to reshape their lives and re-identify themselves. I think that all of us, when we go through a loss that, a loss of a person that was really, really close to our hearts, we lose a part of our identity. A big part of my identity was being Rob's wife. Everybody knew us as that couple. Everybody's like, oh, Marie and Rob, like we were always that perfect couple for everyone and for us as well, not just for everybody else. And that was a big part of my identity. It was Rob and Marie. It was always us two together. And we did pretty much everything together. And then all of a sudden, being the widow of Rob, that was a very different identity. So I feel when we go through adversity, whether that is through loss or anything else that's really big and impacting our lives on a really big and deep scale, we get to that part of re-identification. We need to re-identify who we actually are. And there was this big question, who am I after loss? And with that question, there comes a lot of choice. There comes sitting with, what are all the parts of me? What am I made of? What am I made of? All the different parts, from my inner child all the way to who I am today. All these different parts,
Yeah,
they're
shaping me
all,
this into.
yeah, they're all part of our memories, but they're also things that we can choose. Which path do I choose in life? Which element do I like and love about myself, and which do I not?
Mm.
So, which are the parts that I want to let go of, that I don't like in my life? I did not like the part that felt like a victim. Victimhood was a big part after my dad passed away. I did not want to carry that part forward with me into my life, and especially not invite it back in after Rob died. I wanted to find that empowerment. I wanted to find a different path that could empower others and help others heal and help others see the light. So there's a lot of choice in that, a lot of choice.
Have there been moments where you question about purpose or direction in your life?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Mm.
There was definitely a few times where, because I felt this path that I walked was very much presented to me. I felt there was a very spiritual guidance and connection for me to be on the path that I am now, that I'm on now. And there were definitely moments, especially when I felt that I was holding too much and I didn't take enough care of myself,
Mm.
that I started putting into question if this was the right path for me. But whenever I questioned it, I always found my way back to it. I just found a different way to walk it and a more careful way to walk it, because the most important part, especially when you work in a space of healing, is to look after yourself, to really be more specific and careful and attentive with your self-care and self-love. That's a huge part of it. Self-love is the base for everything of success in life, whether that's relationships, whether that's business, that's money, whether that's whatever you do in life. If you don't have self-love as the base, you will not be successful in the long run. It will always come crumbling down.
What kind of advice would you have, especially for young people who feel like a little bit lost uh, in the modern world?
I would say your mind is so much more powerful than you give it credit for.
Mm.
Whatever you think on a continuous basis is what you start believing. So you can rethink who you want to be. It is so powerful. It is so powerful, and it is available to you every single day. It is available to you for free right now. You can literally start thinking of who you want to be, who you want to show up as in this world, and it's all available to you. And if you feel that it's not, then I can tell you you're most likely hanging out with the wrong people. It takes courage as a young person to choose the people that you hang out with, but hang out with those who believe in you, who love you, no matter who you are, what you are on the day, if you're sad, if you're happy, the people who are there with you and back you up all the way. Those are the people you want to hang out with. The people that you look up to, hang out with them because there's something about them that you want to be. And sometimes you figure out that the people you look up to don't have it all figured out either, you know? It's a path, it's a journey. And always trust your heart. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not that simple.
Mavi, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us. It's been such a
Thank you.
privilege to hear your insight and experiences, and I hope our listener will walk away with something meaningful from this conversation. So, Mavi, where can people connect with you or follow your work online?
Yeah, I think the best way would be just to go to my website, mariealessi.com, because from there you can find all the connections, how to book a chat with me, have a look at our online programs, or if you need a speaker, if you want to have a look at my books, you can find it all on my website.
And to everyone listening, make sure to check out Mary's resources. I include the links to her website and social media in the description below, so you can easily stay connected and explore everything she offers. Take a few minutes to look through them, see what resonates with you, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And I love hearing from listeners and will do my best to respond whenever I can. So, Murray, we arrived at the final part of our conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed do this part at the end of each episode. I called it the last 30-second segment. And before
Okay.
we land off the plane, I would like to leave our audience with something that stick. I mean, a message they can carry with them long after the episode is over. And you think
Mm-hmm.
about those people listening right now. They may be at a very different stages of life. Some might be facing a major crossroad, and some might be struggling to figure out their next step, and some might
Mm-hmm.
be told that their time has passed, and some could be feeling uncertain, overwhelmed, or fighting the battles that we can't ever see. And I want you to imagine that you could speak directly into their hearts and minds. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe you could offer them one powerful insight or one actionable
Yeah.
step they could take right now.
Yeah.
So,
I'd love
Mavi,
to.
I hand it
I
to
would love
you.
to. Yeah.
I hand it to you one last time. If you just had 30 seconds to inspire or motivate someone, what would be your final message you share with them?
I only need 10 seconds. So I want to
Mm.
speak to those who are grieving right now, who are grieving a loved one that was really close to your heart. All I want you to do is step into their perspective. Whoever died in your life, step into their perspective. Look down on your life right now and tell me, what would they want to say to you? I can promise you they would just want you to be happy, because love just wants you to be happy.
Mary, Alessi, everybody. So, Mary, thank you so much uh, for coming to
Thank
the
you for
show.
having me.
See you again.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
Thank you. Bye for now.